The stagecoach rattled into Globe, Arizona on a blistering August afternoon in 1882. Carrying nothing but dust, 3 disgruntled miners, and a woman who looked like she had already died once and was coming back to settle the score with whoever had done it. Gideon Wade stood outside the saloon, his boots planted firm on the weathered boardwalk, watching the coach roll to a stop with the kind of attention most men reserved for dangerous animals or poker hands. He was not particularly tall, not particularly handsome in the classical sense, but there was something about the way he held himself that suggested a man who knew exactly who he was and felt no need to apologize for it. At 26, he had worked ranches from Texas to California, saved enough to buy a small spread-outside Globe, and learned that most people only saw what they expected to see. The woman who stepped down from that coach was not what anyone expected. She wore a dress that might have been blue once, before the trail had beaten it into something closer to gray. Her dark blonde hair hung in a braid that had come half undone, and there was a bruise yellowing along her jaw that she made no effort to hide. She carried a single carpetbag that looked like it weighed more than she did, and when her feet hit the dust of Main Street, she swayed just enough that Gideon found himself moving forward without thinking about it. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "you all right?" She looked at him with eyes the color of smoke, and for a moment he thought she might tell him to go straight to hell. Then something shifted in her expression, something that looked like bone-deep exhaustion winning out over pride. "I am looking for the boarding house," she said. Her voice was hoarse, probably from dust and heat. "Mrs. Patterson's place. 2 streets over," Gideon said. He gestured with his chin, then watched as she bent to pick up her bag. The way she moved, careful and stiff, told him more than words could. "Let me carry that for you. I can manage." "Did not say you could not. Just offering to help." She studied him for a long moment, those smoke-colored eyes taking in his worn work shirt, the cattle dust on his pants, the honest weathering of his face. Whatever she saw must have passed some internal test, because she handed him the bag without another word. They walked in silence through the afternoon heat. Globe was not much to look at, a mining town that had sprung up when silver was discovered in the nearby hills. The streets were wide and dusty, lined with false-fronted buildings that promised more than they delivered. The Silver King mine had brought prosperity, but it was the rough kind of prosperity that came with gambling halls and frequent shootings and men who drank away their earnings faster than they could dig them out of the ground. Mrs. Patterson's boarding house stood on a quieter street, a 2-story wooden structure with a porch that sagged slightly on one side. Gideon had been there before, bringing supplies when Mrs. Patterson's arthritis kept her from making the trip into town herself. The old woman answered his knock with a scowl that softened when she saw who it was. "Gideon Wade, what are you doing darkening my doorway? Brought you a new boarder, Mrs. Patterson." He stepped aside so the older woman could see his companion. "Well, come in, Mrs. Patterson said, her practical eyes taking in the bruise, the exhaustion, the way the young woman held herself like someone expecting the next blow. "What's your name, dear?" "Delilah Harper," the woman said. "I can pay. I have money for at least 2 months' room and board." "We will worry about that later. First things first, you look like you could use a bath and a hot meal." Mrs. Patterson took the carpetbag from Gideon with a strength that belied her 70 years. "Thank you, Gideon. I will take it from here." He knew a dismissal when he heard one, but he found himself hesitating. "Madam," he said to Delilah, "if you need anything, I am usually at the general store or out at my ranch, 5 miles north on the Creek Road. Anyone can tell you how to find me." "Why would I need to find you?" The question was not hostile, just genuinely puzzled. "No reason," Gideon said. Just letting you know." He touched his hat brim again and left, but he carried the image of her with him as he went about his errands. There had been something in her eyes, something beyond exhaustion and pain. A kind of fierce determination that reminded him of wild horses he had worked with. The ones that had been broken wrong, and needed to learn that not every human hand meant hurt. The next time he saw Delilah Harper was 3 days later, and the circumstances were considerably less peaceful. He had come into town for supplies, his wagon loaded with empty crates and a list of necessities from his foreman. The general store was doing brisk business, and he was waiting his turn when he heard raised voices from outside. "I am telling you, I do not know where he is," a woman said, and Gideon recognized the hoarse quality of Delilah's voice even before he moved to the window. 2 men had her cornered against the side of the feed and grain store. They were strangers to Gideon, which meant they were probably miners passing through or men up to no good. The bigger one, a bull of a man with a red face and hands like ham hocks, stood too close to Delilah. "Your husband owes us money," the man said. $300. We know you got it." "I do not have it, and he is not my husband anymore," Delilah said. Her voice was steady, but Gideon could see the tension in her shoulders. "I have not seen him in 6 weeks, and I do not care to see him ever again." "That is real touching," the second man said. He was lean and mean-looking, with the kind of face that suggested he enjoyed other people's suffering. "But the thing is, we tracked him to Tucson, and the last person who saw him said he mentioned he had a wife in Globe. So here we are. And here I am, with no money and no husband and no patience for this conversation." Delilah tried to move past them, but the big man grabbed her arm. That was when Gideon stepped out of the general store. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet authority that made both men turn. "The lady said she does not have what you are looking for." "This is not your business, friend," the lean man said. "I am making it my business." Gideon walked forward slowly, his hands loose at his sides. He was not wearing a gun, which was his usual preference in town, but he had worked cattle and horses all his life, and his hands were weapon enough when they needed to be. "Let her go." The big man tightened his grip on Delilah's arm instead. "Walk away, cowboy." What happened next happened fast. Gideon closed the distance in 3 strides, his hand clamping down on the big man's wrist with enough pressure to make him yelp and release Delilah. The lean man went for his gun, but Gideon was already moving, his boot catching the man square in the knee. The crack was audible, and the lean man went down hard, cursing. The big man swung at Gideon with his free hand, a haymaker that would have taken Gideon's head off if it had connected. It did not connect. Gideon ducked under it and drove his fist into the man's solar plexus, then followed up with an uppercut that sent the man staggering back into the water trough. By now, people were gathering, and Gideon heard someone yelling for the sheriff. The lean man was trying to get up, his hand still reaching for his gun, and Gideon kicked it away. "Stay down," he said, and something in his voice made the man obey. Sheriff Tom Hackett arrived within minutes, a grizzled man in his 50s who had seen enough violence to be tired of it. He took in the scene with weary eyes. "Gideon," he said, "want to tell me what happened?" "These 2 were threatening Miss Harper," Gideon said. "Claiming her husband owes them money, got rough with her when she said she did not have it." Hackett looked at the 2 men, then at Delilah. "That true, madam?" "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I have not seen my husband in over a month. I came to Globe to get away from him. Whatever debts he has are his own." "You too," Hackett said to the men. "You got 2 choices. You can get on the next stage out of town, or you can spend a few nights in my jail. Your pick." The lean man, still cradling his knee, glared at Gideon. "This is not over." "Yes, it is," Hackett said flatly. Because if I see you in Globe again, I will assume you are here to cause trouble, and I will treat you accordingly. Now get." The two men limped away, the big one dripping water from his dunking. The crowd dispersed, disappointed that the excitement was over. Gideon turned to Delilah. "You hurt?" he asked. "No," she said, but her hands were shaking. "Thank you, you did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." He said it simply as a statement of fact. "Can I walk you back to Mrs. Patterson's?" She nodded, and they walked together through the mid-morning heat. For a while neither of them spoke. Then Delilah said, "His name is Daniel Harper. We married when I was 18, and I thought I loved him. He was charming and handsome, and I was young enough to think that was all that mattered." Gideon listened without comment, sensing that she needed to say this. "He gambled," she continued. "Lost money faster than he could make it. When he lost, he drank. When he drank, he—" She touched the fading bruise on her jaw. "I stayed longer than I should have, kept thinking he would change. Then one night he lost big in a poker game in Tucson and came home drunk and angry. He hit me hard enough that I saw stars. When I woke up, he was gone, took what little money we had left and just disappeared." "I am sorry," Gideon said. "Do not be. It was the best thing that could have happened. Gave me the courage to leave. I packed what I could carry and got on a stage headed anywhere he was not." She looked at him. "Why did you help me that day I arrived? And today?" "Because you needed help," Gideon said. "Does there have to be another reason?" "In my experience, men usually want something. I am not most men." They had reached the boarding house. Delilah paused on the porch steps, turning to face him. "No," she said slowly, "I do not think you are." Over the following weeks, Gideon found himself in town more often than strictly necessary. He told himself it was because he needed supplies, or because he wanted to check on a piece of equipment at the blacksmith, or because he had promised Mrs. Patterson he would fix that sagging porch. All of these things were true, but they were not the whole truth. The whole truth was that he wanted to see Delilah Harper. He learned that she had taken a job at the hotel, cleaning rooms and helping with the laundry. It was hard work for little pay, but she did it without complaint. He learned that she was 23, that she had grown up in Missouri on a farm, that her parents were dead and she had no siblings. He learned that she was smart and funny when she let her guard down, that she loved books but had not had much chance to read them, that she was afraid of thunderstorms but would never admit it. He learned all of this in bits and pieces, during conversations on the street, or when he happened to be at the hotel picking up a guest for his wagon. He was careful not to push, not to crowd. He understood that she was like those wild horses, the ones that needed time and space to learn to trust again. What he did not know was that Delilah was learning things about him too. She learned that Gideon Wade was respected in Globe, that people spoke well of him and trusted his word. She learned that he had come to Arizona 5 years ago with nothing but a horse and a saddle, that he had worked himself nearly to death saving money for his ranch. She learned that he was fair with his men, that he paid them on time and treated them well. She learned that he had a quiet sense of humor and a way with animals that bordered on magical. She also learned that he was the only man in Globe who looked at her and did not see a victim or a discarded wife or a woman to be pitied. He just saw her, Delilah. And that was more precious than he could possibly know. It was late September when things shifted between them. The heat had broken slightly, the desert cooling into something almost comfortable. Gideon had come to town for a meeting with the bank about extending his land holdings, and he found Delilah sitting on a bench outside the hotel on her break, reading a battered copy of a dime novel. "Any good?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. She looked up and her face brightened in a way that made his chest feel tight. "It is terrible," she said. The hero is an idiot and the heroine keeps fainting at inconvenient moments, but it passes the time. I have some books at the ranch, Gideon said. Real books, I mean. Poetry and novels and such. Previous owner left them. You are welcome to borrow them if you want. I would like that, Delilah said softly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Delilah said, "Can I ask you something? Anything? Why are you not married? A man like you, with property and a good reputation, seems like you would have had plenty of opportunities." Gideon considered the question. "Never found the right person, I guess. I saw too many men marry because it was expected, or because they needed someone to cook and clean. That never sat right with me. Figured if I was going to spend my life with someone, it should be because I could not imagine spending it any other way." "That is a romantic notion," Delilah said. "Most people do not have that luxury. Maybe not, but I would rather be alone than settled." He looked at her. "What about you? Will you try again, do you think, after everything?" She was quiet for a long time. "I do not know," she finally said. "Part of me thinks it would be foolish to trust another man. But another part of me thinks it would be sadder to let one bad man poison the rest of my life." She met his eyes. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Gideon said. The bank meeting went well, and Gideon was in a good mood as he prepared to head back to the ranch. He was loading supplies into his wagon when he saw Delilah hurrying down the street toward him, her face pale. "Gideon," she said breathlessly, "I need your help." His good mood evaporated. "What happened?" "My husband, Daniel. He is at the hotel. He is drunk and demanding to see me, and Mr. Jeffries does not know what to do. The sheriff is out of town until tomorrow." Gideon did not hesitate. "Stay here." "No," Delilah said firmly. "I am coming with you. I am tired of running and hiding." They walked to the hotel together. Gideon could hear the shouting before they even entered. A small crowd had gathered in the lobby, and a man was ranting at the desk clerk, a timid fellow named Jeffries who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Daniel Harper was not what Gideon had expected. He was handsome, in a worn sort of way, with dark hair and features that probably charmed easily when he was sober. Right now, he was far from sober. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements unsteady, and there was a wild, desperate quality to his voice. "I know she is here," Daniel was saying. "That is my wife, and she has to come home with me." "Mr. Harper, please," Jeffries said weakly. "You are disturbing the other guests." "I do not care about the other guests. I want my wife." "You do not have a wife anymore," Delilah said, stepping forward. Her voice was clear and steady, though Gideon could see her hands trembling. "I am done, Daniel. I am not coming back." Daniel whirled around, and his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, relief, anger. "Delilah, there you are. Baby, I have been looking everywhere for you." "Do not call me that. Come on, do not be like that. I know I made mistakes, but I am different now. I have changed." He moved toward her, his hands outstretched. "Just come home with me and we can start over." "No," Delilah said. "I am not going anywhere with you." "You do not mean that." "You are my wife." "I was your wife. Now I am just someone you used to hit." Daniel's face darkened. "I never meant to hurt you, you know that. I was drunk and I was upset and it just happened. It will not happen again." "You are right about that," Delilah said. "Because I will never give you the chance." That was when Daniel noticed Gideon standing behind Delilah. His eyes narrowed. "Who is this? You replace me already, that was fast." "This is a friend," Delilah said, "and it is none of your business. A friend." Daniel laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "Right, you always were a lying whore." Gideon moved then, stepping between Daniel and Delilah. "Watch your mouth," he said quietly. "Or what? You going to hit me, Cowboy? Go ahead. Give me an excuse to hit you back." "I am not going to hit you," Gideon said. "I am going to tell you once. Walk away. Delilah does not want you here. You have no claim on her. Leave and do not come back. And if I do not, then I will make you leave and you will not enjoy it. For a moment it could have gone either way. Daniel was drunk and angry, and Gideon could see him calculating whether he could win a fight. Then something in Gideon's eyes must have convinced him, because Daniel took a step back. "This is not over," he said to Delilah. "You are still my wife, legally. You cannot just run away from me." "Watch me," Delilah said. Daniel looked like he wanted to say more, but the crowd in the lobby had grown, and several of the men present had moved closer, making it clear whose side they were on. With a curse, Daniel turned and staggered out of the hotel. The tension in the room broke. Jeffries sagged against the desk in relief, and several people came forward to ask if Delilah was all right. She assured them she was fine, but Gideon could see the toll the confrontation had taken. Her face was pale and she was shaking. "Come on," he said softly. "Let me take you back to Mrs. Patterson's." She nodded and let him lead her outside. The afternoon sun was still bright, but Delilah seemed to have trouble walking straight. Gideon realized she was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said gently. "It is all right. He is gone." "For now," Delilah said. "But he will come back. He always comes back, and next time he might not be drunk and he might not back down. Then we will deal with it next time." She looked up at him. "Gideon, this is not your problem. You have done so much already. I cannot ask you to keep fighting my battles." "You are not asking. I am offering." He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Delilah, I know we have not known each other long, but I need you to understand something. I am not going to let him hurt you. Not now, not ever, whatever it takes." "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Gideon took a breath, knowing that what he said next would change everything. "Because I love you," he said simply. "I think I have loved you since the moment you stepped off that stagecoach. I know it is too soon, and I know you have been through hell, and I am not asking for anything in return. I just need you to know that you are not alone. You have someone on your side. You have me." Delilah stared at him, tears still streaming down her face. Then, before he could react, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not a practiced kiss, not a seductive one. It was desperate and grateful and full of something that felt like hope. When she pulled back, she said, "I think I love you too. I do not know how it is possible, but I do. You saw me when no one else did. You saw past the bruises and the fear and all the broken pieces. You just saw me." "You are not broken," Gideon said fiercely. "You are the strongest person I know." They stood there on the street, holding each other while Globe went about its business around them. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Delilah felt safe. But safety in the West was always temporary. Daniel Harper did come back 2 days later. This time he was sober, which made him more dangerous. He found Gideon at the feed and grain, loading sacks of seed into his wagon. "We need to talk," Daniel said. Gideon straightened, taking in the other man's appearance. Sober, Daniel was more in control, but there was still something desperate in his eyes. "I do not think we have anything to talk about. She is still my wife, legally. I checked with a lawyer." Daniel pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I have rights." "Rights?" Gideon kept his voice level, though anger was building in his chest. "You beat her. You took her money. You abandoned her. What rights do you think you have? The law says she is my wife until a judge says otherwise. And I am not giving her a divorce unless she pays me." "How much?" Daniel smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. $500. That is what I need to clear my debts and start fresh. You give me $500 and I will sign whatever papers she wants. She will be free of me. And if I do not, then I will make her life hell. I will follow her everywhere. I will tell everyone in town what a terrible wife she was. I will contest any divorce proceedings and drag them out for years. By the time I am done, she will wish she had just come back to me." Daniel leaned closer. Or you could make this easy. $500 and I disappear forever." Gideon wanted to hit him. He wanted it so badly his hands ached, but he knew that would not solve anything. Instead, he said, "I will think about it." "You have 3 days," Daniel said. "Then the price goes up." That evening, Gideon told Delilah about the encounter. They were sitting on Mrs. Patterson's porch, watching the sun set over the Pinal Mountains. $500, Delilah said numbly. "I do not have that kind of money. I doubt I could save that much in 5 years." "I have it," Gideon said. She looked at him sharply. "No, absolutely not. I am not taking your money." "Why not?" "Because I have already taken so much from you. Your time, your protection. I cannot take your money too." "Delilah, if money can solve this problem, then it is not a problem. I have savings, I can afford it. But that is your future, your plans for the ranch. My plans for the ranch can wait. This cannot." He took her hand. "Let me do this, please." "I will pay you back," she said fiercely. "Every cent. I do not care how long it takes. We can talk about that later. Right now, let me handle Daniel." But fate, as it often did in the West, had other plans. The next morning, Gideon went to the bank to withdraw the money. He was walking back to the hotel, the cash secured in a leather pouch, when he heard shouting from the direction of the saloon. He arrived to find a crowd gathered and Daniel Harper lying in the street, blood pooling beneath him. Sheriff Hackett was there, kneeling beside the body. He looked up as Gideon approached. "Someone shot him," Hackett said. "Looks like it happened less than an hour ago. You know this man, Daniel Harper," Gideon said. His mind was racing. "Delilah Harper's husband. The woman you rescued a few weeks back." "Yes." Hackett stood, his expression grim. "Where is she now?" "At the hotel, working." "Sheriff, she did not do this." "I am not saying she did, but I need to talk to her." They found Delilah in one of the hotel rooms, changing linens. Her face went white when she saw the sheriff, and even whiter when she learned what had happened. "I did not kill him," she said immediately. "I have been here all morning. Mr. Jeffries can confirm it." "I believe you, madam," Hackett said. "But I have to ask, did your husband have any enemies that you know of? Anyone who might want him dead?" Delilah laughed, a hollow sound. "He owed money to half the territory. Any of them might have done it." "Those 2 men from before," Gideon said suddenly. "The ones who came looking for him. They said he owed them money." "They left town," Hackett said. "I watched them get on the stage myself, but I will send some telegrams, see if they came back." He looked at Delilah. "I am sorry for your loss, madam." "I am not," Delilah said quietly. "Does that make me a terrible person?" "Makes you an honest one," Hackett said. "The investigation took a week. In that time, Hackett discovered that Daniel had owed money to at least a dozen different people, any of whom might have pulled the trigger. The bullet had come from a common caliber gun, and there were no witnesses. Eventually, Hackett ruled it an unsolved homicide and closed the case. "Probably someone he cheated at cards," the sheriff told Gideon. "Man like that makes enemies easily. We may never know who did it." For Delilah, Daniel's death brought a strange mix of emotions. She had not loved him, not for a long time, but there was still a sense of loss, not for the man he had been, but for the man she had once hoped he could be. And underneath that was relief, profound and guilty, that she was truly free. "Is it wrong that I am glad he is gone?" she asked Gideon one evening. They were at his ranch, the first time she had visited. It was a beautiful property with a sturdy house and good grazing land along the creek. She could see why he was proud of it. "No," Gideon said. "He hurt you. He would have kept hurting you if he could. Being glad you are safe is not wrong. I feel like I should mourn him, but I cannot. All I feel is free." "Then be free," Gideon said. He pulled her close and she rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Be free and be happy. That is what you deserve." They were married in November. a simple ceremony at the church with Mrs. Patterson and Gideon's foreman as witnesses. Delilah wore a dress that Mrs. Patterson had made for her, pale yellow with lace at the collar. Gideon wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. "You look beautiful," he told her before the ceremony. "You look happy," she replied. "I am. Are you?" Terrified, she admitted, but in a good way, like standing on the edge of something wonderful and scary at the same time. "We will jump together," Gideon promised. The ceremony was brief, and the words were simple, but when Gideon kissed his bride, it felt like the beginning of something that could last forever. They moved into the ranch house together, and Delilah discovered that she loved ranch life. She learned to ride, though it took several attempts and a very patient horse. She learned to cook over the wood stove, though her first few attempts were disasters that Gideon ate gamely without complaint. She learned the rhythms of the land, the way the seasons turned, the way the cattle moved, the way the desert bloomed after rain. And she learned what it meant to be loved by a good man. Gideon was patient and kind, never pushing her, always giving her space to heal. There were nights when she woke from nightmares, still feeling Daniel's fists, and Gideon would hold her and remind her that she was safe. There were days when the fear came back, when she flinched at sudden movements, and Gideon would slow down and be gentle until the fear passed. "I am sorry," she said after one such episode. "I know I am broken." "You are not broken," Gideon said firmly. "You are healing. There is a difference. What if I never fully heal? What if I am always like this? Then I will love you like this." "Delilah, I did not marry you because I thought you were perfect. I married you because you are you, all of you, including the parts that hurt." She cried then, but they were good tears. Winter came, and with it the cold nights that made the desert feel like a different world. They spent evenings by the fire, reading or talking or simply being together. Gideon taught her to play chess, and she turned out to be surprisingly good at it. Delilah taught him to braid, practicing on her own hair until his clumsy fingers learned the pattern. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Gideon told her about growing up poor in Texas, about losing his parents to fever when he was 15, about working his way west with nothing but determination and hope. Delilah told him about her childhood on the farm, about her mother who died when she was 12, about her father who drank himself to death 2 years later. They were both orphans, both survivors, both people who had learned to make their own way in a hard world. "We are a matched set," Delilah said one night. "How so?" "Both alone, both lost, both finding our way." "Not alone anymore," Gideon said, pulling her close. "Not ever again." Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle had calved well, and Gideon hired 2 more men to help with the increased work. The creek ran high with snowmelt, and wildflowers painted the hillsides in purple and gold. And Delilah discovered that she was pregnant. She told Gideon one evening in April after he had come in from a long day of branding. He was tired and dusty, and she handed him a cup of coffee and said, "I have news. Good news or bad news. That depends on how you feel about becoming a father." For a moment, Gideon just stared at her. Then his face split into the widest smile she had ever seen. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be. I have missed 2 courses and I have been sick in the mornings. Mrs. Patterson says those are reliable signs." Gideon set down his coffee and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "I am going to be a father." "Are you happy?" Delilah asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it." He set her down gently as if she might break. "How do you feel? Are you well? Do you need anything?" "I am fine," she said, laughing. A little sick in the mornings, but Mrs. Patterson says that is normal. The baby should come in late November or early December. A winter baby, Gideon said. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I already love you more than I thought possible. Delilah felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she had always wanted, always dreamed of. A home, a family, a man who loved her. After everything she had been through, all the pain and fear and loneliness, she had found her way to this moment. To happiness. The pregnancy was not easy. The morning sickness lasted well into the 4th month, and there were days when Delilah could barely keep anything down. The summer heat was oppressive, and her swelling belly made her uncomfortable. But Gideon was endlessly patient, bringing her cool water and sitting with her during the worst of it. I am being ridiculous, she said one particularly bad day. Women have babies all the time. You are not being ridiculous. You are growing a human being. That is hard work. I wish it would hurry up and be November. Me too, Gideon admitted. I cannot wait to meet them. What if I am a terrible mother? The fear had been growing in her for weeks. What if I do not know what to do? Then we will figure it out together. My mother used to say that no one really knows what they are doing. We all just do our best and hope it works out. That is not very reassuring. Maybe not, but it is honest. He took her hand. Delilah, you are going to be a wonderful mother, I know it. This baby is lucky to have you. I hope you are right. As fall approached, they began preparing the small room off their bedroom as a nursery. Gideon built a cradle from oak wood, carving flowers into the headboard. Delilah sewed blankets and tiny gowns, her hands working slowly as her belly grew. Mrs. Patterson visited often, bringing supplies and advice and her own warm presence. You are going to do fine, dear, the older woman assured Delilah. First babies are always scary, but your body knows what to do, and you have Gideon and you have me. You are not alone in this. The baby came on a cold December night, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Delilah woke Gideon in the early hours, her face tight with pain. Something is happening, she said. Gideon, who had dealt with countless birthing cattle but had never felt more helpless in his life, rode like hell to fetch Mrs. Patterson. By the time they returned, Delilah's contractions were coming hard and fast. Good thing babies do not wait for anyone, Mrs. Patterson said, rolling up her sleeves. Gideon, boil water and get me clean towels, then stay out of the way unless I call you. The next hours were the longest of Gideon's life. He paced the main room, listening to Delilah's cries and feeling utterly useless. He had faced down rustlers and broken horses and summer storms, but none of it had prepared him for this. For knowing that the woman he loved was in pain, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Finally, as dawn broke over the mountains, he heard a different sound, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, a smile on her tired face. You have a son, she said, and your wife wants to see you. Gideon entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Delilah was propped against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. And in her arms, wrapped in one of the blankets she had made, was a tiny red-faced baby with a full head of dark hair. Meet your son, Delilah said softly. Gideon sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the baby in wonder. He was so small, so perfect, so impossibly real. He is beautiful, Gideon whispered. He has your nose, Delilah said. Poor kid. She laughed, then winced. Everything hurts, Mrs. Patterson says that is normal, but I feel like I got kicked by a horse. You were amazing, Gideon said. He reached out tentatively, and Delilah guided his arm so he could hold his son. The baby squirmed and made a soft noise, and Gideon felt his heart crack open in a way he had not known was possible. Hello, little man. I am your papa. What should we name him? Delilah asked. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything. Now, looking at his son's face, Gideon said, James, after my father, James Parker Wade. James, Delilah repeated. I like it. James Wade, she smiled. Our son. Our son, Gideon echoed, and the words felt like a prayer. The first months with a baby were exhausting in ways neither of them had anticipated. James was a good baby, all things considered, but he still needed constant attention. There were feedings every few hours, diaper changes, baths, and seemingly endless crying when he was colicky. Delilah was often so tired she could barely see straight, and Gideon did everything he could to help, though there were some things only she could do. I never knew it was possible to be this tired and this happy at the same time, Delilah said one night, nursing James while Gideon sat beside her. He is worth it, Gideon said. Oh, absolutely. But I would also kill for a full night's sleep. Sleep when he sleeps. That is what Mrs. Patterson said. Mrs. Patterson clearly does not remember what it is like to have a newborn. When he sleeps, I have to do laundry or cook or clean. There is no sleeping. I will take him tomorrow afternoon. You sleep. You have ranch work. The ranch will survive. You need rest. And he did take James the next afternoon, carrying his son in a sling Mrs. Patterson had made while he did light work around the barn. James seemed to enjoy being outside, his tiny eyes tracking the movement of the horses. By the time Gideon brought him back inside, Delilah had slept for 3 hours and looked almost human again. Thank you, she said, taking the baby. I feel like a new person. You look like one too, Gideon said, kissing her forehead. We are a team, remember? We do this together. As James grew, his personality began to emerge. He was a curious baby, always watching everything with solemn dark eyes. He was also determined, fighting sleep even when he was clearly exhausted, wanting to see everything. Gideon saw himself in that stubbornness, and it made him laugh. He is going to be a handful, Delilah predicted. Good. The world needs more people who do not give up easily. By the time James was 6 months old, life had settled into a new normal. The ranch was doing well, and Gideon had been able to buy additional land. Delilah had recovered from the birth, though she joked that her body would never be quite the same. And James was thriving, a healthy, happy baby who smiled easily and laughed often. One evening in early summer, they sat on the porch together, watching the sun set while James dozed in Delilah's arms. You ever think about how different things could have been? Delilah asked quietly. If you had not been there that day I arrived, or if you had not helped me, sometimes, Gideon admitted. But I try not to dwell on it. We are here now. That is what matters. I could have ended up anywhere with anyone or alone. She looked at him. I got so lucky finding you. I think I am the lucky one, Gideon said. You came to town as a stranger, hurt and alone. And now you are my wife, the mother of my son, the person I love most in the world. If that is not luck, I do not know what is. You saw me, Delilah said softly. That first day when I stepped off the stagecoach. You saw me when no one else bothered to look. You saw past the bruises and the fear. You saw who I could be, who I wanted to be. I saw who you already were, strong and brave and beautiful. You just needed someone to remind you. They sat in silence for a moment, James sleeping peacefully between them. Then Delilah said, I love you, Gideon Wade. I do not say it enough, but I do, with everything I am. I love you too, Gideon said, more than words can say. The years passed gently after that. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses and following his father around the ranch. When he was 2, Delilah discovered she was pregnant again, and this time she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Sarah Mee Wade, was born on a warm spring morning in 1886, and she was different from her brother in every way. Where James was curious and determined, Sarah was serene and gentle. Where James was always moving, Sarah was content to sit and watch the world go by. "We make interesting children," Delilah observed when Sarah was about 6 months old. "We make perfect children," Gideon corrected. "I did not say they were not perfect, just interesting." By 1888, the ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, and Gideon employed 6 full-time men. They had built an addition onto the house, adding a proper dining room and 2 more bedrooms. James started school in Globe, riding into town with one of the ranch hands each morning. Sarah toddled after her older brother, worshiping him with the single-minded devotion only a little sister could manage. Delilah had changed too. The frightened woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 6 years ago was gone, replaced by someone confident and strong. She managed the household accounts, helped with the ranch business, and had become a respected member of the Globe community. She no longer flinched at sudden movements or had nightmares about Daniel. That part of her life felt like a distant memory, like something that had happened to someone else. "Do you ever think about him?" Gideon asked one night. They rarely spoke of Daniel anymore. "Sometimes," Delilah admitted, "but not the way I used to. Now when I think of him, I mostly feel pity. He could have had a good life if he had made different choices. Instead, he died alone in the street, owing money to people who did not care if he lived or died." She looked at Gideon. "I got the life he could have had. Home, family, love. It feels like justice in a strange way." "You earned this life," Gideon said, "by surviving him. By being strong enough to leave, by being brave enough to start over. I could not have done it without you, maybe, but I think you would have found a way. You are tougher than you give yourself credit for." In 1890, Globe was changing. The silver was starting to play out and some of the mines were closing. People were leaving, heading to new boomtowns or back east. But the Wade Ranch was stable, built on land and cattle rather than mineral wealth. They weathered the economic changes better than most. That same year, Mrs. Patterson died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78. Her funeral was well attended, and Delilah cried for days afterward. The older woman had been like a mother to her, the first person to show her kindness when she arrived in Globe. "She would be proud of you," Gideon said, holding his wife. "Of the woman you became, the life you built." "I hope so," Delilah said. "I owe her so much. We both do." By 1892, James was 10 and Sarah was 6, and Delilah discovered she was pregnant for a 3rd time. This pregnancy was harder than the first 2. She was older now, 33, and her body did not bounce back as easily. There were complications, and the doctor in Globe insisted she rest as much as possible. "I do not have time to rest," Delilah protested. "I have a house to run, children to care for." "Then we will hire help," Gideon said firmly. "Whatever it takes to keep you and the baby safe." They hired a woman from town, a widow named Martha who was excellent with children and kept the house running smoothly. Delilah chafed at the enforced rest, but she knew Gideon was right. This pregnancy felt different, riskier somehow. Their 3rd child, a daughter they named Elizabeth Grace Wade, was born in January of 1893 after a long and difficult labor. The doctor was worried for a while and Gideon spent hours pacing and praying. But both mother and baby survived, and when Gideon held his youngest daughter for the first time, he wept with relief. "3 children," Delilah said weakly from the bed. "We have 3 children." "We have 3 miracles," Gideon said. "Are you all right, tired? The doctor says I should not have any more babies. My body cannot handle it." "Then we will not have more. 3 is perfect, more than I ever dreamed of." Elizabeth was a colicky baby, crying often and sleeping rarely. The first few months were exhausting for everyone. James and Sarah tried to help, but there was only so much they could do. Gideon and Delilah took turns walking Elizabeth at night, bouncing her and singing to her until she finally settled. "This is harder than I remembered," Delilah said one sleepless night. "That is because we are older and more tired to begin with," Gideon said. "But we will get through it. We always do." And they did. Elizabeth eventually outgrew her colic and became a sweet-tempered baby who smiled at everyone. By her first birthday, she was walking and getting into everything, keeping her siblings on their toes. The ranch continued to prosper. Gideon had a reputation as a fair dealer and a man of his word, and buyers sought out his cattle. They were not rich by any means, but they were comfortable, with money saved for the children's future and no debts hanging over their heads. In 1895, James turned 13 and started working the ranch alongside his father. He was a natural cowboy, with his father's way with horses and his mother's determination. Sarah, at 11, was more interested in books and learning. She devoured every book she could get her hands on and talked about becoming a teacher someday. Elizabeth, at 2, was still discovering the world, a bright-eyed toddler who followed her siblings everywhere. One evening that summer, Gideon and Delilah sat on the porch they had shared so many times before. The children were inside, James reading to his sisters before bed. "Can you believe it has been 13 years?" Delilah asked. "Since I came to Globe, feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once," Gideon said. "I was so broken when I arrived, so sure I would never be whole again." "You were never broken, just hurt. You always say that." She smiled at him. "I am glad you were stubborn enough to see it, to see me. How could I not? You were the most remarkable woman I had ever met." "I was a mess. You were surviving. That is remarkable." Delilah leaned her head against his shoulder. "I would not change a single thing. Not the pain, not the fear, not any of it, because it all led me here, to you, to this life, to our children." "I feel the same," Gideon said. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "You came to town as a stranger and you left as my wife. Best decision I ever made was helping you that day. Best decision I ever made was letting you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over the Arizona desert. Inside, they could hear James's voice reading, punctuated by giggles from his sisters. The ranch was quiet around them, the cattle settled for the night, the horses dozing in their stalls. "What do you think the future holds?" Delilah asked. "More of this, I hope," Gideon said. "Watching our children grow, growing old together, maybe someday grandchildren." Delilah laughed. "That seems impossible, but I suppose everything seemed impossible once. Nothing is impossible. You taught me that. You survived what should have broken you. You built a new life from nothing. You are the strongest person I know." "I had help," Delilah said softly. "I had you. We had each other. That is what made the difference." As the night deepened, they eventually went inside, checking on their sleeping children before retiring to their own room. Gideon held Delilah close, and she felt the same sense of peace and safety she had felt since the first time he had stood up for her. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges, but also joy and growth. James grew into a young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch. At 18, he started courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a smart, pretty girl named Catherine who could ride as well as any man and was not afraid of hard work. They married when James was 21, in a ceremony at the church in Globe that reminded Gideon and Delilah of their own simple wedding. "I cannot believe our son is married," Delilah said, watching James dance with his new wife. "I cannot believe we are old enough to have a married son," Gideon replied. "Speak for yourself. I am still young and spry." "Of course you are." Gideon pulled her onto the dance floor, Prove it." They danced, and Delilah felt the same flutter in her chest she had felt at 18, at 23, at every age since. Gideon still made her heart race. He still made her feel seen and valued and loved. That had never changed and never would. Sarah, true to her childhood dreams, became a teacher. She studied in Tucson and returned to Globe to teach at the new school that had been built as the town transitioned from mining to ranching and agriculture. She was patient and kind with her students, and she loved her work. She married at 25 to a lawyer named Thomas Caldwell, a good man who supported her career and shared her love of books. Elizabeth, the baby, grew into a spirited young woman with a talent for art. She could draw anything she saw, capturing the beauty of the desert and the ranch with stunning accuracy. When she was 18, she went to study art in San Francisco, the first of their children to leave Arizona. It was hard for Delilah to let her go, but Gideon reminded her that they had raised their children to be independent and strong. "She will come back," he assured Delilah. "Arizona is in her blood," and he was right. Elizabeth returned after 2 years, her skills honed, and opened a small studio in Globe where she painted portraits and landscapes. She never married, content with her art and her freedom, and her parents supported her choice. By the turn of the century, Gideon and Delilah were in their 50s, their hair graying, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and long years. But they were healthy and happy, surrounded by their children and, increasingly, their grandchildren. James and Catherine had 4 children, Sarah and Thomas had 2, and Elizabeth remained blissfully unencumbered and devoted to her art. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Gideon took Delilah back to the spot where they had first met, outside the old saloon on Main Street in Globe. "Remember this?" he asked. "How could I forget? I was terrified and exhausted and had no idea what was going to happen to me. And I was a cowboy who could not mind his own business. Thank goodness for that." Delilah squeezed his hand. "You saved my life, Gideon Wade." "You saved mine right back. I was just going through the motions before you arrived. Working, eating, sleeping, but not really living. You gave me a reason to live, a family, love, everything that matters. We saved each other," Delilah said. "That is the truth of it." They stood there on the street, older now but no less devoted to each other. Globe had changed around them, had grown and evolved, but their love had remained constant. 20 years, Gideon said. "Here is to 20 more." "At least," Delilah agreed, and they got those years and more. They watched their grandchildren grow, saw the ranch pass to James's capable hands, celebrated Sarah's success as an educator, and took pride in Elizabeth's artistic achievements. They grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. On quiet evenings, they still sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. They talked about the past, about the long road that had brought them to this moment. And they were grateful, both of them, for the stranger on a stage coach, for the cowboy who saw what no one else bothered to see, for the love that had grown from the ashes of pain and fear. When Gideon was 72, he fell from his horse while checking fence lines and broke his hip. The injury left him weak, and he never fully recovered. Delilah nursed him through his final months with the same fierce devotion she had shown everything else in their life together. She held his hand and read to him and reminded him of all the good years they had shared. "No regrets," Gideon said near the end. His voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. "I would not change a single moment." "Neither would I," Delilah said through her tears. "You gave me everything, Gideon, everything that matters." "We gave each other everything," he corrected gently. "That is how love works. It is a gift both ways." He died peacefully one November morning, with Delilah beside him and their children gathered around. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch, where he could watch over the land he had loved. Delilah lived for 5 more years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, could not even imagine it. Gideon had been her one true love, the man who had seen her when she was invisible, who had loved her when she was unlovable, who had built a life with her from nothing but hope and determination. She died quietly in her sleep at 77, and they buried her beside Gideon on the hillside. Their headstones were simple, marked with their names and the years they had lived. But those who knew them understood that the real memorial was the life they had built, the family they had raised, the love they had shared. Years later, their great-grandchildren would ask about them, and their grandchildren would tell the story. About how Delilah had come to Globe as a broken stranger, running from a violent past. About how Gideon had been the only one to see past the bruises and fear to the remarkable woman beneath. About how they had fallen in love in the wild, harsh beauty of Arizona territory. About how they had built a ranch and a family and a love that lasted a lifetime. It was a story worth telling, a legacy worth remembering, because in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the hardships they had faced or the challenges they had overcome, but the love they had found and nurtured and protected through all the long years. She had come to town as a stranger and left as his wife. He had seen what no one else bothered to see. And together, they had built something that would last long after they were gone. A family, a home, a love story for the ages. The ranch still stood, passed down through the generations, a testament to what could be built with hard work and devotion. The house still sheltered Wade descendants, and the land still provided for them. And on quiet evenings, if you stood on that porch where Gideon and Delilah had spent so many hours together, you could almost feel their presence, still watching over the life they had created. In the wild west of the 1880s and beyond, where life was hard and love was often a luxury, Gideon and Delilah had found something precious and rare. They had found each other, and in doing so they had found everything that mattered. They had found home.